This is Michael Popok. Look at the time. Look at my glasses. It must be legal AF after dark. The dam is broken. Republicans of every stripe, every role, every leadership position, including Republican White House presidential lawyers and scholars, have banded together now against Donald Trump, united, circled the wagons, and now they're endorsing Kamala Harris. We were honored to have one of the signatories to the recent 12 different White House lawyers who worked for Republican administrations come forward and talk to us about how he got to the point of writing and signing that letter. Nick Rostow, former National Security Council, General Counsel and Advisor, joins us on Legal AF. Take a listen. We're going to talk about the groundswell of support by Republican leaders, patriots, constitutional scholars, White House lawyers who all worked for Republicans and who banded together in a new Republican White House lawyers letter, which we have our copy of here, not only to rebuke, that's my word of the day today, Donald Trump, but also to endorse, more importantly, endorse Kamala Harris, and for good reason. Let's bring in Nick Rostow. Hi, Nick.
Hi there. It's great to be back on your show.
Hi, Nick.
Thank you. And for those that follow the show closely, we had Nick Rostow on because he's also an expert on classified documents, national security issues, and we brought him on way back when we talked about the Mar-a-Lago case and about SIPA, the Classified Information Procedures Act case, right?
Right. If I had documents, classified documents in my garage, I'd be in jail. I wouldn't even, there'd be no trial. There'd be nothing.
Yeah. So we got Nick back, and when he's not my law partner, full disclosure, he has an illustrious career. It would take an entire show for me to read out his CV, but you can go on Wiki and in other places, my firm website, and find his. But we'll just summarize it this way, in a very pithy way. As it relates to this segment. Special Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs and Legal Advisor to the National Security Council for both Reagan and Bush 41. And so you know that those are both Republicans. And let me just read excerpts from the letter. I did a hot take about Judge Ludick about a week earlier. He's also joined this letter about his position that he's taken. And we're going to have him on tomorrow. I'm going to have him on for a separate special edition of Legal AF as an interview. But let me just read to you what Nick signed along with all these other lawyers, including Judge Ludick, and we'll get to that in a minute. It starts this way. We are lawyers who worked in the White House and executive office of the president for Republican presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. We endorse Kamala Harris and support her election as president because we believe that returning former President Trump to office would threaten American democracy and undermine the rule of law in our country. And that's the first sentence, folks. I continue. We urge all patriotic Republicans, former Republicans, conservatives, and center-right citizens and independent voters to place love of country above party and ideology to join us in supporting Kamala Harris. And then they give some of the reasons why. Donald Trump's own vice president, Pence, and multiple members of his administration and White House staff at the most senior levels, as well as former Republican nominees for president and vice president, have already declined to endorse his reelection. They understand especially well the profound risks presented by his potential return to public office. Indeed, Trump's own attorney general and national security advisor have said unequivocally that Donald Trump is unfit for office, dangerous, and detached from reality. Trump's attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after losing the election proved beyond any reasonable doubt his willingness to place his personal interest above the law and values of our constitutional democracy. And they don't conclude it this way, but I think this is a very poignant point here to segue into Nick coming on. We believe this election presents a binary choice, and Trump is utterly disqualified. Accordingly, we choose to cast our votes for Kamala Harris to prevent returning to office someone who was guilty of grave wrongdoing to our Constitution, democracy, and rule of law, and who remains unfit, dangerous, and detached from reality. And then they give a whole list, which we'll talk about over with Nick, about why they will vote for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Let's bring on Nick. Nick, talk to our audience about how your own personal evolution and how you got to this moment in history where you decided, and you've been doing this regularly with the filing of amicus briefs with this group or the similar group against Donald Trump, but talk about, your background, your Republican, Federalist, conservative background, and how you got to the point where you said, I'm going to help write and sign this letter and endorse Kamala Harris. From my vantage point as both a constitutional and White House presidential scholar and also as a Republican.
Well, my personal evolution is from sort of A to B. I was an intern for Henry M. Jackson, a senator from Washington, Scoop Jackson. I don't know how many people in your audience will remember him, but he was a hawk on defense and foreign affairs and a liberal domestically. And my needle really hasn't moved very much since then. And I could not, I went to work in the Reagan administration just by serendipity, really, and wound up as legal advisor to the National Security Council and held that position for 5.5 years. I was and am the person who's held that job longer than anybody. And one learns working at the White House what an extraordinary office the office of the president is, how bound up with the history and constitutional history of the country it is, and how much respect one has for it, and how much respect for the office its holders, at least the ones I worked for, had for it. For example, George Herbert Walker Bush was never in the Oval Office in his shirt sleeves, always in a suit, wearing his jacket. And Donald Trump is I mean, this has been an easy one for me. I spent years working in New York City as a lawyer, and he was in my face for 40 years. And everybody in New York knows what he is. Doesn't pay contractors, doesn't pay lawyers, lies about everything, and is good at only self-promotion, bankruptcy, and criminal conduct. So to me, he was unsuited to be president in 2016. I never thought I'd vote for Clinton. I voted for Hillary Clinton. And in 2020, it was easy. Interestingly enough, I signed a letter like this in 2020. There were 5 of us on that letter. One is now the acting president of, or interim president of Discover, and so he cannot sign a partisan letter, but or a political letter, I should say. But now we have 7 additional people, so it's 12 people who served various administrations as White House lawyers, and we all take the Constitution and Article 2 very seriously, and worked our hardest to protect the office of the President of the United States from attack inside and outside. So it's really quite simple.
Yeah, well, Karen's going to have to kind of leave us a little bit early. Let me ask Karen. You want to ask Nick some questions before I kind of wrap up our segment here?
I more than anything, I just think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to come forward, because anyone in the kind of role that you have had, working for various presidents, et cetera, you're not isolated. You come with a community of peers and people, mentors, and people you have been a mentor to, I'm sure. You know, that's just the way this is. And to take a stand like this is takes a lot of courage, because you didn't just take it personally, and you could have easily just voted in quiet and done your thing, but you've taken it publicly, and I admire that courage. And I always say to myself, I hope I would show that same courage if faced with it, when everyone in your circle is saying something different. So, I just wanted to, more than anything, say that to you and others like you who put their own careers on the line, actually, potentially, by taking this sort of position. So, it's a true public service, and I'm just very appreciative, and it's great to have you on the show. And, I want to, whether it's you, whether it's Adam Kinzinger, whether it's, people like Liz Cheney, who I don't agree with any of her policies, but I respect so much what she did. There is a certain kind of strength that requires, and Mike Pence too, and I know a lot of people just really say, yeah, you can't celebrate him for doing his job. I don't know. I think you can. I think you can. It's hard to do what you're doing and what others do. It's easy for us because all the people we hang out with, agree with us. But if you have to do what you're doing, it's amazing. So really, truly, thank you for your service, but also thank you for coming on our show and being a part of this community.
Well, I really appreciate that. To all of us, as first of all, the American people are united by the Constitution of the United States, and all officials take the same oath. The president's oath is a little different, but everybody else, it's to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, public and private, foreign and domestic. And when Mitch McConnell said that what happened on January 6th was, I don't have the text in front of me, but he used the word terrorism, and he called them terrorists, and he said one man was responsible, Donald Trump. Now, material assistance to terrorism is a very, very serious federal crime. And I suppose under the Supreme Court immunity decision, it would be difficult to get an indictment for material assistance to terrorism as described by Mitch McConnell. But for me, that's exactly what it was. And it was, as Judge Ludwig has said over and over again, insurrection against the Constitution of the United States, which the president is sworn to uphold. So, that's what I used to get paid the big bucks to defend, and I still believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, for you, it also demonstrates, Nick, that, we had an era where you could work for a Scoop Jackson as a Democrat, but be considered to be a statesman and somebody who was an adult and cross over into the Republican world and work for two Republican administrations. They didn't look at you and go, "Oh, you're not loyal because you came from the blue side. You're a Democrat." We don't have that. I mean, I hear people. I had a debate with somebody yesterday, which was very depressing to hear how they framed things. And they almost suggested, I wanted to bring this up with you, they almost suggested that the reason that the country is involved in one way or the other with two different wars, the Russian aggression on Ukraine and Hamas's attack on Israel, is because of the Democratic administration that's in office. Whereas when you and I were, kicking around 30, 40 years ago, you rallied around a president during the time of war. You didn't blame the president because it happened to happen on his watch, right? You didn't, unless he's to blame for it. But they so elide over that, and it becomes, we didn't have any wars under Trump, and we've got wars now. Ipso facto, it must be the Democrats' fault, right? As opposed to the patriotism which goes with a sophisticated recognition that world affairs are sometimes out of our control. We may be the world's policeman, but we're not the world's, telepathic, Orwellian controller of outcome.
Yes, that's true, and it's very distressing. I have a friend who's married to a Republican congressman, and she wrote me that some friend of hers had said, "How could you have so and so at a dinner party? That person's a Democrat." I mean, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah,
and it's a very bad state of affairs. It's also very ignorant to think that Russia invaded Ukraine for the second time because Joe Biden was president. That's absurd. In my view, Biden has done a better job on foreign policy than anybody had a right to expect. And he's been right on Ukraine, he's been right on Israel to give them time, and he's been right on Taiwan. And presumably Kamala Harris has been right there with him. I mean,
I agree. I think if Kamala gets elected, where my audience position is, it's going to be a tough call. If I were her, I'd try to keep Blinken. I think Blinken has done a nice job, very good job as Secretary of State. I know there's going to be a push to maybe return Hillary Clinton back. She did right, but I think Blinken's doing a fine job. Let me read for those that aren't going to have access, although we will post it. We have posted it. Let me read some of the things from the letter as we round out this segment. You had a bunch of bullet points that you signed on to here. Let me just read some of them out loud. We will vote for this on page 2 and 3 of the letter. We will vote for Kamala Harris because we strongly believe that unlike Donald Trump and his MAGA movement, Kamala Harris and her administration, one, will respect the results of elections, whether she wins or loses. It will not deny the results of a free and fair election by pressuring public officials to find extra votes or commissioning fake presidential electors to falsify the results. That's ripped right out of the new indictment against Trump by Jack Smith. She will oppose rather than encourage and pardon violence and physical attacks by political partisans. That she will not erode our constitutional system of checks and balances by claiming dictatorial power. That she will not undermine the First Amendment by demonizing the press as the enemy of the people. That she will not foment bias and disrespect among fellow Americans by demeaning Americans of immigrant heritage, women, minorities, and persons with disabilities. And this is one of my favorites. That she will not undermine our fellow citizens' patriotism and love of country by continuously trashing essential national institutions and by routinely comparing us unfavorably to foreign despots and autocrats or denigrate the sacrifices of our veterans and their families. And for these reasons, we endorse Kamala Harris and oppose returning Donald Trump to any position of power or trust under the United States. And then we've got the long list of signatories. Karen's right. It took a lot of courage for all of you to band together with and do it from the vantage point of your unique perch in history. I wasn't ever in the White House. I visited the White House. I've never had a tourist pass. I've never served a president in that way. And there's a lot of heft and gravitas that comes when we have the mandarins of our institutions who love our Constitution stepping out and writing and signing on to a letter, one that has gotten a lot of attention, one that has joined in the chorus of Republicans and people who served Republican administrations calling for Donald Trump at the ballot box to not be returned to office. Let's leave it on this, Nick. What has been the reaction that you've been able to obtain from the letter in it? Does it match what your expectations are? What were your expectations? What did you want to accomplish by getting this letter out? And what has so far happened in terms of the letter, the response to the letter?
Well, the hope is that it might cause some people to think hard about how they're going to vote and why, and about Donald Trump's real record, not what he says it is, but what it really was, and his view of the law and the Constitution. But I've been pleasantly surprised by how much play it's gotten. It got more play than the first letter I signed back of this kind back in 2020. I also was one of the national security Republicans who signed a letter in 2020. Many more people supporting Biden, but there were 5 of us in 2020 who signed the letter of this sort that was published in the Washington Post. And it sank without a trace, as far as I can tell. This, I think the Harris campaign has picked up and spread it around, so it's gotten notice. And friends of mine who are going to vote for Trump said, "Damn it, we should have taken the pen away from him."
Well, I'm glad you have a pen. I'm glad you're my partner and my friend. And I'm glad you agreed to rejoin us here on MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Nick, always a pleasure. Couldn't think of anybody better to have to talk about this particular segment, especially as a prelude to Judge Luttig joining me tomorrow, one of your dear friends as well. And the reason, frankly, that Judge Luttig agreed to join me I've interviewed him now 4 times, this will be the 4th time, is because you made that connection and contact between me and Judge Luttig. And for that, I am forever grateful. And so is, our 3 million strong audience. So, Nick, really, really great to have you here. Welcome back. We sit at the intersection of law and politics twice a week, so you don't have to. Right here on the MeidasTouch and Legal AF. All you have to do is free subscribe. Help the network get to 3 million. No outside investors. Watch us live record the show Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and you can live chat with the anchors, or you can just pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice by plugging in Legal AF. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.